I want to welcome everyone here. This is our first in a three-part series on capitalizing on uncertainty, simple strategies to see through the fog. And it's really timely, isn't it? Because we're in a perfect storm of economic uncertainty, talk about bank runs and challenges and inflation. There's no shortage of bad news. We all see the headlines about it and supply chain issues and declining There's no shortage of bad news. And I suspect some of you are here because you're either experiencing it firsthand or you see it coming on the horizon, and good on you. You want to be prepared for when it comes and what you can do about it. So first of all, congratulations for joining us and actually finding some answers rather than just putting our head in the sand and hoping for the best. So this is what we want to see through this webinar series, because there is plenty of doom and gloom out there. But there's plenty of bad news, but I think it's time for some good news, some realistic good news, not just airy-fairy stuff, but the good news is that there are proven steps that you can take to weather this storm and even come out stronger. Others have gone through a recession before. This isn't the world's first recession. This isn't the world's first global downturn, economic downturn. And we can apply the lessons from previous sessions to our businesses today. So the purpose of this webinar is to look at what successful organizations did in previous recessions and downturns, and then apply those to our businesses today. So my hope is that you'll leave the webinar today feeling inspired. I want to challenge some thinking, and for a few minutes, pull you out of the day-to-day and to think more broadly about what is possible in your business in these times. I also want to encourage you. I hope you'll be encouraged, because we want to demystify some of these strategies, that this isn't as complex or as hard as you maybe think it is, and that we can do this. We can get through. And I also hope, my hope for this session is to give you some practical steps, not just theory and buzzwords or vague concepts or use cases from big businesses overseas somewhere, but saying, well, that's great, but give me some practical steps about how we can apply it to our time today. So having said that, I would really like to know from you. Let's just take 30 seconds in the chat. Can you tell us, why are you here and what do you hope to get out of today? So let's go ahead and take a second, pop it in the chat there. And why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of today's session? So just click on the chat there and just say, what do you hope to get out of it? Why are you here? Okay, let's go ahead and so what I want to do is I want to start with what's possible, and so I'll give you some real world examples of other organizations, how they dealt with their challenges, and then we're going to talk about some research. So I like to start out with what I saw firsthand. I was at Air New Zealand for almost 10 years, and in the airline is actually divided into two business units. One is the international airline. The other is the domestic airline. And for year after year after year, the international airline lost money. It was always seen as losing money because New Zealand is so far from where we want to go. There's a lot of fuel, big airplanes having to fly there. So high labor costs, high competition, 27 different airlines fly into Auckland International. And so year after year, it was just seen as a loss leader. It'll never make money. But what we'll do is we'll just make up for the loss when we get people on the domestic network. But in 2012, Christopher Luxon was, before he was the CEO, he was actually brought in as the group general manager for the international airline. And he did this really good exercise of going out to the staff with the problem, saying, okay, all Air New Zealanders, the challenge is we are not profitable. We need to make the airline profitable. So through this exercise called Small Ideas, Big Differences, the call went out to all of the staff saying, give us your ideas. How can we make the international airline profitable? And to sweeten the deal, if we use your ideas to make it financially, beneficial, you will get 10% of the financial benefit. So there's a double benefit there. First of all, that we were able to make that international airline profitable, and people came in with great ideas, that I would have never thought of, such as changing from in the business class from cloth tray covers to paper tray covers, rationalizing from, I think it was like 12 different blanket and pillow suppliers to 2. Also, the cleaners came up with a great idea. Hey, if we change how we move through the cabin, we can, and how we approach the cleaning, is after every flight, we need to go through and clean the different aircraft. If we change how we do that, we can actually save time and save money and deploy people differently. So through that exercise, they're able to turn something that was thought to be a loss leader, it'll never make money, into a profit center, and they remain profitable for many years to come because they asked their staff for their ideas. It's called rapid collaborative problem solving. Went out to and they were able to leverage the power of the team of the staff to come up with ideas. So that's a very good local example. Another example I like is about it was a tire manufacturer, and the manager was walking the floor, which is a great thing to do, walking the floor, and he saw this one guy wrapping each individual tire at the end of the assembly line to get it ready to ship. And so the manager thought, why are we wrapping each individual tire? So he asked the question, why are we doing it? And surprise, surprise, the answer that the man gave him was, we've always done it this way. That's our process. But he didn't let it stop there. He did some digging, and he found out that the wrapping each individual tires started back in the days they made white wall tires. These beautiful white walls on the tires that needed to be protected from scuffs and marks and things like that in shipping. And so they started. That's why they wrapped them. But they'd since moved from white walls to radials, but they never changed the process. So by actually looking around and saying, why are we doing this? Why are we using resources there? He was able to redeploy that labor and save the cost by asking the question, why? Another favorite example that I like is Fujifilm. So in 2000 to 2010, the film development, the film, production industry just crashed. It was 90% down in those 10 years because of the advent of digital cameras. But Fujifilm survived. As a matter of fact, I passed their offices, and they have offices in Auckland a few weeks ago. They're still around. They're doing well because rather than dumbing down on what didn't work, the president of Fujifilm ordered the head of research and development to take an inventory of all of Fujifilm's technologies and look at emerging trends and things outside their industry and compare the two. And so through this exercise, they're able to map, here's Fujifilm's technology and capabilities, and here's how they can meet emerging markets. And they were able to go into repurpose what was in their hands into pharmaceuticals, into cosmetics, into highly functional materials. And they even identified the coming LCD screen boom. And they did that because they looked around at what was in their hands. That's a powerful example. Some more local examples. One of our clients, Urban, they're an Auckland-based brewery. And during the COVID lockdown, the big challenge was all the bars and pubs were closed, and they couldn't get their product to their customers because all the couriers were busy. So they were looking at a minimum 14 days between the order and when the customers could get it in their hands. What gained a temporary, they were able to develop same-day cold beer delivery for their customers in Auckland, which is a huge game changer and set them ahead. Another example is Goodness Gracious. It's a cafe, and they were experiencing staff shortages, which I'm sure probably many on the call have staff shortages as well. But what they did was they automated the front of house with an iPad for ordering. And so the whole shop could be run by one barista and one chef. And that way they could cope without the 2 extra wait staff they would have had. So those are some real world examples, and I hope you see, and the wheels are starting to turn about how you can apply these things in your business. But let's look at some of the research. So last year, McKinsey put out this Navigating Inflation, a playbook for CEOs, and they looked at what CEOs can do differently, and they recommended 4 different actions to CEOs to navigate a recession. The first one was redesigning products for value and availability. So the example here was during the semiconductor shortage, which you might have heard about a couple of years ago, automotive manufacturers redesigned or de-featured products so they could use the semiconductors that were available rather than having to stop the assembly line and wait for the parts to come in. Another thing that they advised CEOs to do was just redesign the supply chain for visibility and agility. So looking at your supply chain and saying, what about our supply chain isn't working? How can we be more nimble, more responsive when things happen? How can we streamline it and get better visibility? Other alternative suppliers? And also, how can we create value, not just cut costs in our procurement process? So an example of this was one electronics supplier was having a hard time getting their products out of Asia. So they shifted their production to the United States and Mexico. And another actually purchased its own fleet of aircraft to get their supplies to them. So thinking a bit differently about the challenges, and we'll talk about this more in session 2, and then in session 3, rather than just we have a problem, but saying, well, why do we have the problem? And what if we can do something differently? And how might we sort it out? And then another thing that McKinsey recommends is challenging the specification orthodoxies. What's really required? And how might we deconstruct and redesign our products or services to meet the current customer needs? We'll be looking more at this in session 3. See a little magnifying glass down there. So session 3, but looking more at that, which would be a fun one. And the fourth thing that McKinsey recommended CEOs do to navigate the recession was promote near substitutes. I mean, really, do they need the top of the line Rolls Royce, or will a trusty Toyota do? A consumer goods company, they actually adjusted by using private label equivalents rather than the higher end branded products and that not only maximize their margins, but it also increased the value to customers. So that was McKinsey's advice. And Bain & Co. also did some really interesting research on 3,900 businesses and how during the global financial crisis. And what they found was that the winners through the last recession behaved very differently than the losers. They outperformed their peers, and they did it by 4 different things. The first thing was that they conducted the early cost restructuring and applied financial discipline early. Listen, the sooner you get your financial house in order, the sooner you have your emergency fund, the sooner you have your cash reserves, the better off you'll be. So get your financial house in order and apply those financial disciplines early. We'll be looking more at this in session 2. So I hope you're joining us for that. Another thing that Bain found the winners did differently is they pursued aggressive commercial plays. Oftentimes I talk to business leaders. It's interesting because a lot of these guys who are very, very sharp men and women who are leading businesses, what they say is, I don't take my foot off the gas. At our company, we don't take our foot off the gas during recession. And they also invest heavily in research and development and enhancing customer experience. So even during recessions, you can look at new products, new markets, new ways to grow, new opportunities. And the fourth thing that the winners did differently that Bain found was that they pursued mergers and acquisitions. Because let's face it, these are tough times, and some people might not be able to handle the jandle. So there will be opportunities to be had. There are bargains to be had. There are deals to be made. Maybe perhaps somebody who you thought would be a very good fit for your merger or acquisition previously and declined you, they might be a bit more open during this time. So what the winners did is they proactively pursued mergers and acquisitions. So you say, well, that's great, that's exciting, Chris, but all this talk about aggressive moves and innovation is great, but if money is already tight, what can we realistically do? Well, I got some good news for you there. Because if you look back at the Air New Zealand example we just talked about, it doesn't have to cost you much to go to your team, to go to your staff and say, help us, give us your solutions. What ideas do you have to solve the problem? You'll actually get some really creative solutions that you couldn't think about in the executive room, because, but also you'll find that will increase employee morale, because they like being part of the solution finding. Wow, somebody's finally listening to me. So that rapid collaborative problem solving, that Air New Zealand example, doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. Also simplifying the offering, just, and also experimentation, asking why is this costing us money? Why do we have this inefficient process? It doesn't cost you too much money. I'm sure that the tire factory example, it didn't cost them any money to walk around and say, why are we doing that? Maybe we should change. So I'll give you a minute to read this one yourself. So when I was at Air New Zealand, I was there during the Rob Fife and Christopher Luxon days. Rob Fife always used to say, if you're running a race, the best place to pass someone is when you're running uphill. That's the best place to pass your competition. And recently, I also heard Guy Howard Willis speak. Now, if you don't know him, he was the co-founder of Torpedo 7 and the One Day Deal website. And he said actually that the 2008 global financial crisis was actually a good time for Torpedo 7 and One Day, because people were looking for those simple, affordable options. And so that's why the recession was a good time for him. Now he's working on a pretty cool thing called the Manta 5 hydrofoil bike. Check it out if you're a water type person. So that's some of the research, and we'll be digging into more research and how to apply that further in the next few sessions. But the good news, and I hope you guys are grasping this, the good news from the research and the few examples I mentioned is that it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all just a one-way trip downhill. Let's just batten down the hatches, go into the fetal position, and hope for the best. Through this series, we'll be distilling this positive thinking, positive actions, and tactics to help you navigate uncertainty. I'm not blowing smoke and saying it's all rosy and there aren't challenges. No, indeed there are, but there is the opportunity to better navigate these challenges and find ways to succeed. And that's what this whole webinar is about. So a little about me, a lot of PowerPoints there, but just if I was to sum up my career, over the past 20 years, I've been helping businesses innovate to solve the most complex challenges and deliver positive change. That's what I do. And what I found through innovation, through delivering transformational projects, is that in essence, it comes down to a couple of questions. The first question is, what's the problem we're trying to solve, or potentially the opportunity we want to realize? And what's the most effective way to get there? What's the problem we need to solve, the opportunity we need to realize, and what's the most effective, efficient way to get to that goal? So that experience, plus the research that some of it we've just talked about here, has led me to a very simple model when it comes to the problem of how do we navigate recession. So if that's the problem, that's the problem we're trying to solve, right? And it's a very simple model here, a very simple framework. Simple may not be easy, but it's simple, right? Because there are many variables. Each company is different. Each industry is different. You're having different challenges, different opportunities, and there are many different levers that you can pull to navigate through the recession. You see in that table there, box 3 has some of them. So it starts by asking the right question. On the left-hand side, what is our current state? It all starts with getting your bearings. What's our current state? And then from there, so if understanding our current state, getting a realistic view of our situation, what's the problems we need to solve, those obstacles, those challenges, those hindrances that are keeping your business from performing well through these times, or the opposite, where's the opportunities? How do we find the gold that's buried, that untapped potential in our business, like the Fuji film example? And then from there, you figure out, so which tools or actions will get us the most positive results as fast as possible. Listen, in these challenging times, we don't need a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan to resolve it. We keep our strategic view, but this is a more tactical, how do we deal with the challenges that we face? So it's about getting results, positive results as fast as possible. So that's how this webinar is structured. Today, you're looking at getting your bearings. So the first step, understanding your current state and what the key problems to solve are and the opportunities that to realize might be. And then next week, we go deeper into understanding and addressing the problems in the business, those challenges, what's losing you money, what's losing you staff, what's losing you customers, what's not working in this current economic environment. And by fixing them can have the most positive impact on your business. And then session 3 that's the fun session. I love that session because it's all about looking at the positive things in your business that we can leverage, asking what's possible, how can we grow, maximize the opportunity available to, even in these challenging times. What's that gold? Where's that gold buried in that untapped potential that we can realize? So each of these sessions will have a Q&A time with a panel of experts who can share their insights. So again, if a question comes up while I'm speaking, click on that Q&A button, type it in there, and we'll get it into the queue there. And also, like our strategy and execution sessions, for those of you who've been in one of those, we pack a lot of information in here. But the good news is, because we're about helping you, that all these questions I'm about to share with you are in the homework that we'll be sending out to you. So you don't have to furiously scribble, take screenshots. We will share with you this deck, the PowerPoint deck, as well as some homework to help you turn this from concept to action. So I encourage you, think about it, take it in, and I'm hoping that it will inspire some fresh thinking. So you all ready to get stuck in? Give me a thumbs up. Still with me? Haven't scared you off? Excellent. Thank you. So let's get stuck in. Getting your bearings. Often, you hear that term, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. Yeah, but I think it actually starts with figuring out where the heck you are, because you need to know what your current state is, get your bearings, and then say, okay, so knowing where I am and what my particular challenges are, and that's where I want to go to, here's where I need to point my feet. So we need to get our bearings. And that's simply, and just for the simplicity here, is getting your cash. What's your position? What's your cash position? That's so fundamental. We're going to start there. What is my cash? What's my financial position? What's my customer position? What's my competitive position in the market? And what's my internal company position? And by getting a proper assessment, and maybe asking yourself in your leadership team some challenging questions, by getting a realistic view of what our position is, then we can quickly identify. So knowing that, here's the problems we must solve, and here's the opportunities we want to maximize. So let's look at your cash position. A lot of bullet points here. It'll be in the slides. It'll also be in the homework. But this is so fundamental because cash is king. Cash flow is where businesses get in trouble. So the 2 questions I want to start out with is, what's my average net cash flow? Am I making money or am I losing money, right? Because if you're making money, then you're in a whole better position than if you're losing it. But if that cash flow is negative, if you're, if you are sending out more money than you're bringing in, then the next very important question is, what's your cash runway? How long do you have until the money runs out? Very key position. You don't want to be dead man walking. You actually want to have your ability to continue on as far as you can. So if we're cash flow positive, great, then we're looking good. Cash flow negative, how much time do we have to make the changes we need to keep this business and turn it into thriving? So that is the key question. Listen, if you don't know what your average monthly net cash flow is, if you don't know what your runway is, please, after this, don't do anything else. Figure out what your cash runway is. Figure out what your position is, so you know how much time you have and how much time you have to work with. So other good important questions that will be in the homework and will in the thing is, what's your cash conversion or your cash to cash cycle? How long does it take you from when you pay for your raw materials to you get paid for them by your customers? Because just shortening that period for that's in that cycle a few days can have a huge impact on your cash flow. Also, do you know what your most profitable products and services are and your least? Where are you making money, and where's money lost and won? Another question that you want to understand about your cash position is, how diversified is your revenue stream? Are you too reliant on a single product line or a single customer base, which we'll talk next? What's your debt position? Can we get rid of it? Can we ease some of the pressure by restructuring it? What can we do to ease and improve your financial position? And we'll be looking at that in session 2, more about strengthening your balance sheet. And a bonus question, do you actually have the capital to redeploy into strategic growth initiatives? If we're going, do we have the money to spend where we need to spend it to grow our business even through this time? And if so, how much do you have? So your cash position. The other thing is your customer position. Are you too reliant on a few customers, or do you have a broad customer base? Has your customer base grown, grown or remained stable or declined? Other interesting question, what shifts have you seen in customer behavior over the past year? How have they been impacted by the economic challenges? Are they closing their wallets? Are they deferring orders? Are they slowing down? Are they slower to pay? Also, where do customers buy? What are your channels to market? Because your profit margin from them buying directly from you online versus wholesaling is completely different. So where are they buying? Have there been any shifts there? Another important question, do you know who your most profitable customers are and who your least profitable customers are? And what's your customer view of you? How loyal are they? How sticky are they? Are they happy to work with you and stick with you through these challenging times? So your competitive position, and this might seem like just standard strategy stuff, but I highlight it because it's very important in challenging times, because navigating difficulty requires laser focus and clear messaging. We need to know what we're about. We need to know what is most important to us as a business and what our value proposition is. And also during economic challenges that may affect your differentiation and your value proposition. So, or what aspects of your differentiation, you might have several points of differentiation, but one might be slightly more enticing during these challenges. So, what is your value proposition? What differentiates you in the market? Another interesting question is that your competitive position, the last one there, what changes have you seen in the industry over the past few years? Because it's an interesting question, because although you might see changes in the industry, right? We'll look at more of this in session 2. But although you and your competition operate in the same industry and the same environment, you might be in the same ocean, but you're not in the same boat. You're not in the same boat as your competition. And how you differentiate your response to these industry-wide, economic-wide challenges will help you navigate out of it faster. So how you respond differently will set you apart and help you outpace. So I encourage you, you all may be in the same ocean, but you're not in the same boat. You have an opportunity to respond differently to these challenges than your competition and pull ahead. And I think by attending today is one of those steps that you've taken. So well done. Also, your company position. How confident are you that your company culture will withstand the adversity, excuse me? What's the current state of your employee morale? Are they worried? Are they up for the challenge? Listen, they're all struggling, petrol, and they're suffering inflation as well as individuals, as we are as a business. Do we need to shore up the employee morale and engagement? Do we need to focus on them, before or as we do our big, bold moves? What's your company morale at the moment? And then there's a few others there. But also what I want to highlight is how effective are you at listening to your customers and acting on their feedback? Because listen, you can do all the surveys, you can have a coffee with them once a year or invite them to an end of the year dinner. But at these times when they are having challenging times, when they are in the economic difficulties, listening to your customer is so important, and it's never been more important than it is now. Not just listening, but acting. What are they complaining about? Because actually what they're complaining about might be an opportunity for you. And we'll talk about that a bit more. So by understanding our cash position, our customer position, our competitive position, and our company position, as you see, hopefully those questions have started to kind of bring some thinking and spur some thinking there. You can then figure out, okay, what's the key problems we have to solve and what are the opportunities to maximize? So we'll look at that just shortly here. I'll let you read that a second there. What are the problems holding you back? What are the problems, if solved, or the opportunities, if realized, will provide the biggest impact to your business? What will move the needle? What will really have an impact? What problems you have to solve? What positive things to improve? So, as I like to ask people, where's the pain? What's the pain point in your business? Is it financial? Is it labor costs, labor shortages? Is it your financial position, your runway, supply chain? Or is the main problem to solve a customer pain? Not only them closing their wallets and deferring orders, but are you too reliant on a few customers? And that internal operation stress/structure. This is a very interesting one too, because when times are good and the money's flowing in, it's easy to overlook waste and inefficiency, suboptimal performance. Yeah, you kind of let this slip, let that slide, inefficiencies. But when times are tight, these little niggly things become magnified. And that could be the difference between profitable and losing money. It could be the difference between keeping customers and losing customers. So you want to look at your internal processes. You look at more of this in session 2. What processes are not working? What are not optimized and streamlined? What's your sales? If you look at your customer journey, is it the sales process? Is it low conversion? What's wasteful, time consuming? What's frustrating your team? What's frustrating your customers? Where are we losing money? And then within the water industry, we talked about that previously. So understanding what is the pain, where are the biggest pain points in your business, the problems that, if solved, will have the biggest impact on your organization. So we'll go through that exercise, and this will be in the worksheets. So work with yourself, with your leadership team. What are those key problems? What are the top 3 problems that will have the biggest impact if we can solve them? And how fast can we solve them? And then, we'll go deeper in this in session 3. What are the opportunities yet to be realized with the untapped or unknown potential? It could be a new product or service. It could be innovating. It could be actually simplifying your products and services to make them more affordable. What unmet customer needs can we address? What are our customers complaining about? It's like, I wish this could, this is my biggest pain point. Oh, we can take care of that. And if you can't do it within your own organization, but I have this knowledge, I know another organization has that knowledge, together we can solve a problem. And also, what unique know-how or capabilities do we have that can be repurposed? The Fujifilm example. What is in our hands that we can use to meet these emerging needs? And what merger acquisition could be a very good direction for us in this time. So the same thing. What will move the needle? Where's it untapped potential? And also, is there a big idea that you have but need to validate? Maybe it's the time to dust that off and look at how we can improve that, how we can actually make it happen. Another question I'd like to ask is, what big, bold move have you been considering but not yet mobilized? Is now the time. So looking at the opportunities and thinking, what are the big opportunities, the untapped potential that, if realized, will have the biggest positive impact to our business? So what's our customer position? What's the problem to solve, opportunity to realize? The next thing is, who do we need on our team? I can't stress this enough. Changing the trajectory from doom and gloom, fighting the economic inertia of downturn and retreat, is not a job for the B team. It's not a development opportunity to give your junior person who doesn't have the chops for this sort of stuff. It's not something to be lost among 10 other very important priorities of your executive team either. Consider the size of the prize. The upsides, if you get it right, like the examples that we talked about earlier, and the consequences of getting this wrong, of letting this be drowned out by the noise and other things. What we need is a SWAT team, the cross-functional A team, those A players who have, if you recall from our strategy work, who are, high performance and high cultural fit. The people who's got the mana in your organization to make things happen. Who's got that skill set of getting things done. And it needs to be cross-functional. They have the mana, they have that clear mandate. They also have the focus to remove themselves from other things, to focus on this, because it really, really matters. If we want to get through this business, through these economic challenges, again, what's the size of the prize? What is the benefit if we get it right, and the consequence if we get it wrong? Let's not give this to the B team, and let's empower them to make decisions and act, to remove the roadblocks, to enable fast decision-making, experimentation, mobilization. Let's get our A team on this. So I got some homework for you. And we will send you the slide deck. We'll send you a current state assessment worksheet for you to work through. And I encourage you, don't just kind of, scribble a few things on it. I encourage you to really think about these. Challenge your assumptions, because what was right during the boom period might not be right and accurate during these challenging times. Put yourself in your customer shoes, your staff shoes, talk to your leadership team about it, and come to a consensus about these current assessment things. Because the better you understand your current state and how you can start to turn the tide from doom and gloom to opportunity, the more successful you will be. So here's your homework. We want you to confirm your financial position and runway. Do that today if you don't know. Review your challenges and opportunities, your current position, and identify what those top 3 problems and top 3 opportunities are. And also, who is going to be on your SWAT team. So that's your homework. I encourage you to do that. And listen, as we said, this is the first of a 3-part webinar, because we believe this is important. We believe this is critical in these times. So we're going to launch a poll here. And so I encourage you to click on the poll. And I encourage you also, join us for sessions 2 and 3. We've given you some frameworks and some tools. We'll be providing more research, more framework, more tools that you can apply to your business in the New Zealand context that will really help you navigate these challenges and perhaps think differently about it. So I encourage you, listen, it's free for Advisory.Works clients. It's only $200 for non-clients. And we're so confident you'll get value from this. If you're a non-client, and if you don't rate this as an 8 out of 10, these 3 webinars, then we will not invoice you, okay? So there's no risk to you, because we really want to get this information in the hands of businesses who can use it. So no risk. It's $200 if you find value from it. If you don't find value from it, then we won't invoice you. So there's no risk to you. Another thing we're offering is that if you complete all 3 webinars, we will do a complimentary one-on-one session with one of our advisors to really kind of go over what your findings are and what your action plan is, and bounce around some ideas and sharpen the ideas to be able to create that action plan that turns it from a great, an exciting webinar to action in your business. Because listen, I don't want to hear what a great webinar it was. I want to hear what actions you were able to take and the changes you have to make in your businesses because of it. So also, if you were sitting here thinking, oh, wow, this is a great webinar, great information. I wish Susie or Fred or Caleb was able to hear this. They could really use it. Let us know, because we will be happy to send you a link to this webinar that you can share with your colleagues and friends, and they can start joining us from the next one. So you'll get send us, we'll send you a link. So your friends and everybody you know that could have used this information won't be left behind either. So with that, we're going to invite Luke Kimmies and Uli to join us. And I hope you've had some really good questions in the Q&A. So Luke Kimmies, for those of you who know, he's got a broad following, got an audience of 25,000 people on his Keep the Change site, his Keep the Change videos. He's the people's accountant. He and his business partner, Philip, help Kiwi business SMEs better understand the world of tax and business. And Uli, one of our strategic advisors here, he's got a long-standing history of entrepreneurship. He is very well known in the financial markets, and he's prepared over 50 SMEs for an IPO. So very, very good heavy hitters on the finance space. So so with that, we will turn over to our Q&A.
Maybe as an icebreaker, Luke, what sort of advice do you currently give to your clients, given that we're probably facing a recession?
Yeah, there's some really good thought-provoking questions during that presentation from Chris. So there's some awesome stuff to get people started there. But I guess firstly, you really need to look after yourself. And I think that's something that we see clients often forget, is that they'll focus so much on the business and all the doom and gloom and the noise that's going on out there, but often forget to do the basics of keeping themselves energized and keeping themselves well. Because then often that extends to the business. So then hopefully we're going to then be more likely to keep an eye on all things within our business and actually do some of these things. So we need to have a cash flow forecast, for instance, in place. We need to understand our cash runway. We need to understand why we're taking on the work that we're taking on. Are we just taking it on out of fear that we're not going to get any more? Is it actually generating any margin? Is it profitable for us? So this is a great time for business owners to really get a good degree in business. And one thing we've been speaking to clients a lot about recently is what you did over the last couple of years is probably not going to work anymore. So for a lot of us, we had the advantage of there being so much money in supply and money being so cheap that often the market was coming to us. And then we got this false sense of, you know what, I'm pretty good at this business thing. I'm doing pretty well here. And I'm speaking to Fred down at the bar and he's saying he's going pretty good too. And now we're at a time where we have to go to the market. And we haven't learned the skills a lot of the time to do that. So that means that we need a renewed level of energy to actually find ways to go back to the market and say, hey, we exist, transact with us, you can trust us, we're the people you should be doing business with. And that can be a big mindset shift for Kiwis, especially because the reason we don't want to do that is A, we haven't really had to, but B, when people kick back at us and sort of say, no, I'm not interested, we take that as rejection, failure. And so then we say, well, we tried those things, but really we only tried once. And so I think the thing to remember is to just drop that emotional part of it and realize that the energy levels required by us through a more challenging time are probably higher. And that's where I think that analogy of the best area to pass other people in a race is running uphill. And if we can remember that, then that should be a driver for us to keep kicking when things get harder. But obviously, as we know, this is when a lot of people will actually slow down.
Excellent. Thanks, Luke.
Chris, you talked about the challenges that companies might have. So I might share a challenge of one of my clients. they've grown significantly, probably doubled their revenue in about 18 months. And obviously that comes with operational challenges. And as they got busier and busier, the team started dropping the ball in terms of customer communication, in terms of being on site on time, actually delivering what we promised to deliver. So these are things that we're currently tackling, where we say, okay, we'll set up a training program, which is every week the owner of the company actually meets with a whole team. It's always a group of 8 people, and they talk about what's gone wrong and how can we raise the standards. Because the problem is, and you mentioned that, all of a sudden in recessionary times, if customers don't need to come back and they have a lot more choice, it's easier to walk away. So just making sure getting these things right is so important, rather than chasing the new clients.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Karina, do you have any questions there? Or Logan, do you have any questions there to answer? I'm not main.
I know you've got good practical advice for clients that are less financially minded, which a lot of us aren't, right? And I love the language that you use in your podcast and the way that you simplify things. So before this, we were talking about your emergency buckets and the kind of percentages that you can put aside to build up cash reserves. Give us a bit of a rundown on some of those quick fire tips that you would give businesses to prepare for a longer haul.
Yeah, so typically what we see is that business owners will look at, or can often look at, one bank account, and that's their guide to how they're doing financially. But they then may not understand what is in there that's actually cash, what's GST, cash for them, sorry, what needs to be set aside for tax. And that isn't enough education to run a business and run it really well. So we need to be understanding what's still tied up in debtors, what tax obligations do we have coming up, what's our cash outflow in terms of debt that we are repaying, and then with the impact of interest rates going up as well. So we often keep it really simple for clients and start to structure out bank accounts in a different way, so that they start to move some of those funds aside so that they're there. And that can include having a GST account, for instance, so that we don't overspend that and get behind on it. It can include using something like Smartly Payroll, so that the PAYE portion goes out at the time we pay the wages, so that we don't get behind on PAYE, and then also putting some money aside for tax. But one of the other things that we were trying to encourage clients to do leading up to a contractionary time like this was to have what we like to call a shit hits the fan account, which is just an emergency fund effectively, but a little bit sexier. So we were saying to clients, put 1 to 3% of every invoice you send aside into that emergency fund, so that you start to build up the knowing that you've got cash sitting there should some things hit the fan. And of course, during amazing times, we sort of think, well, I don't really need to do that. And then you sort of dip into it and you use that money to buy a different vehicle, or something happens like that, right? But that practice of discipline is amazing for people now when they get into a situation like this and they're going to need access to this cash. So if you haven't been doing that, I think my suggestion would be to have a brainstorm yourself of, where can I get access to cash from? Because it's going to get harder. And it's gotten more expensive, for instance, but you might be able to tap on an investor's shoulder. It could be someone in your family, for instance, or it could be, you know what, we've got $100,000 of unpaid debtors there. We need to get on the phone, and I need to get a thick skin and call them and say, when can we expect that payment by? Because we need that cash to be able to continue to run our business and pay our wages. If that's something that you've put off doing, that's straight on the to-do list of, you know what, I'm going to do that. Because the longer you leave that to get paid, the higher the likelihood you never see that again. But the danger is that people don't do these things, and then they need the cash, and the first thing they do is they Google quick cash, and there's 4 finance companies running ads straight at the top of Google, and they say, get finance in 24 hours, and you go, that's exactly what I need. And you fill out that form, you get $100,000 wired to your bank account. Your accountant asks you, wow, what's your interest rate on that? And you say, I've no idea. And the answer is probably 18 to 36%, depending on how desperate you were for that cash. So be very careful what you think are the solutions when there really are some simple solutions sitting right in front of you. They're just a little bit harder and they take more time. But as we know, those things that take more time are usually the things that we need to be doing and doing consistently.
So that's a really great point. We talk about the emotion of making decisions under duress versus buying yourself time to make decisions, and I guess when you're panicking trying to find $100,000 at 36%, it's probably too far gone at that point. So, what would be your advice around how you speak with your bank before things get difficult? We noticed through COVID, obviously, the banks changed their behavior. What would be your advice for nurturing the relationship with the bank?
Yes, so if you've got a direct relationship with your bank, or if you don't, you probably want to try and become a business that does and has that kind of two-way communication going, because otherwise they're just going to ask you for things sporadically and say, can we please see your accounts? We want to see how you're going, for instance. And then all of a sudden you're on the back foot. So you want to try and keep your bank in tune with what you're doing and where you're going so that they can help match the right finance products to your growth. And banks can be quite poor at that. Hopefully there's no bankers tuning in, but they'll often be focused on sales targets or other things, and they won't stop and look at their own customers and go, which of these ones should we be talking to? So as much as you sort of think I shouldn't need to, and this is the same for accountants, you think my banker's keeping an eye on me, my accountant's keeping an eye on me, they've got everything under control. They're probably putting out fires in their own businesses and also probably trying to sell and do business development. So there's a high chance that you're over relying or over delegating what you may think those two entities are doing, so your accountant and your banker. So front foot it yourself and try and engage in some of those conversations because you don't know what solutions may actually be available to you. And they create new finance products all the time within some of these banks, and you've got no idea that you actually could have got access to asset finance specifically for some of those things, rather than borrowing against your property or taking out that Prosper loan or the short-term overdraft that you sought. So try and keep that communication going. And I think as well, if you're getting to that point where you're trying to access cash and access it really quickly, just stop and put your hand up and ring your accountant, for instance, or just call off and go, what is this actually? Would the person that I'm becoming in the future, would they regret this decision? Because that's the person that has to repay this, the later version of you. So it can feel easy to fill out those applications and get that cash quite quickly, but you could come to regret that. So maybe just run it past an accountant or someone that may make you think about some of the consequences or other questions around that.
It's a great visual, isn't it? Forcing your future self to run on the hamster wheel because of the decision you're making now. I think that's a really good image. We've got a question that's come through the Q&A. So it says, Luke, what are your thoughts on how much information you tell your team about the financial position of the business?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one. I think that one comes back to the individual leader. And I'm sure you guys have probably got some thoughts on this yourself and can add some data here, but we've got clients that do. And then we've got clients that are like, no, that's completely off limits. So, it is a really tricky one because you do run the risk of sort of scaring staff away if things aren't rosy, because I think for a lot of employees, there's just this sort of thought or thinking that, business owners are killing it. They make heaps. They've got the flash houses. Oh, look, they get to go away and do what they want. And then they've got a boat or, so they make assumptions of how easy business is. But if you rock the boat too much of sort of how you're going and how it's not where you're at, then I think people start to worry, and that could have an impact further into your business. And I just saw before we jumped on here that the warehouse group's earnings are down, and they've gone from letting 190 people go through to letting 340 people go. So, things are really starting to turn. And Kiwis are wasting 13 hours per month at work worrying about money from their personal situation. So you've got to be careful how much of your problems you give to them to understand too. Personally, I'm quite a big advocate for trying to educate your staff around the realities of business. But of course, with all of that, comes a downside where they get stressed by it and whatnot. So I'm not sure if, Logan, you guys have got some thoughts in that space yourself.
I guess there's two things. I hope I don't offend anyone here, but some of it comes down to the financial literacy of the people in the business. If you're a business that has a high level of financial literacy, I find transparency is the better option, because everybody understands the part that they play to the success of their career in the business. If the financial literacy is not high and people don't understand what the information that you're sharing with them means, then, like you said, it can have a real detrimental effect to both their expectations of you and what you should be paying, and also how secure their future is in the business. Uli, that's probably a good one to direct at you, given your expertise. What are you seeing in clients as far as the transparency goes?
What I just want to add to that is, if there's no financial or hardly any financial literacy in there, you still want to talk about the good and the bad things of the people, what they're doing and what the impact is to the business. Because, I mentioned earlier, there's some sort of stuff ups. They need to understand this is the impact that it actually has on our financial position, because they might not even think about it. So I think that's the owner's obligation, just to make sure they understand what's happening if something's not going right. So that's what I would add to it. And oftentimes, owners share mostly the top line and maybe some sort of gross margins, but not the net profits. That's what I mostly see. But it really depends. It probably depends a bit on the person and on the margins that the companies achieve on average. If it's low margins, obviously it's a lot easier to share the numbers.
I think Uli and Luke, one of the questions that I've been asked by quite a few times over pretty much the last 2 weeks since the news of Xero's redundancies and the minus 0.6 GDP, since those kind of figures came out, people have been saying, how long do you think this recession is going to last? And so you've seen articles that we've put out in the past on U-shape versus V-shape and protracted recessions and things. What do you think the two scenarios are that we're dealing with from a time frame point of view? Do you want to go first, Uli?
Let's put it this way. As long as the interest rates are where they are, pretty high, and they keep on rising, the Fed increased interest rates this morning, I don't see a fast recovery. So, and even if we have a slow recovery, let's say 0.3% in GDP, it's not really growth. So we're probably talking 6 to 9 months at least. When you look at the Fed, they're saying they're not starting to lower interest rates before 2024. So that's the current projection. So, and given that environment, if we've got these high interest rates, look at the mortgage payments that people have to make, look at the cost of living, etc. So what I'm seeing with my clients, retail is really affected quite strongly right now. Some other companies, that revenue is literally just falling off the cliff. In construction, it looks better because you've had a backlog for a long time, and builders are still busy. But when you look at the architects, it doesn't look as rosy. So you kind of see, the early indicators in the construction industry, they're starting to struggle a bit, and it will affect construction companies, builders, etc. And they're the last ones to recover. So it depends a bit in what industry you're in and where exactly you sit within the supply chain, when and how long you're going to be affected.
Yeah, Luke, what's your pack?
Sorry, I was just muted there. I got so many thoughts in this. So let's just go back to basics to start with, like, what's a recession, right? So technically, it's 2 quarters of negative growth in the economy. So we've just had December's announcement, and that was negative 0.6. So by the time we get Marches, which is literally only 7 days left to go, then we're not going to get that till June. So people in June, we're probably going to learn in June, breaking news, New Zealand's in a recession. But remember that recession really started back in October last year. But that will be a big mental like, wow, I've got to do something about this. This is very different. Wow, this thing's real. So then I think we'll see like a button off even more of people spending, and people will try and take things seriously. But interestingly, I fluked it on Friday and managed to sit next to Adrian Orr flying down from Auckland to Tauranga, the Reserve Bank Governor General. And I joked about how the GDP had just come in at 0.6, and he must have had a busy week with these banks looking at failing and stuff. And he was just kind of like, 0.6, whatever. And I'm like, okie dokie. And I said, well, you are trying to engineer this, to be fair, so you're not going to be surprised, are you? But usually we find out, a recession that we're in it once it's here, but we were sort of warned that it is. So often what we'll say to clients too is this recession can go as long as you want it, because it's gonna be up here as well. So you can create a recession in your business whenever you want, even in a massive bull run and a boom. You can decide not to do the things you really need to do, and you can create your own recession. So I think what we want to do is we want to go, righto, if the economy is slowing down, then how can we ensure that we're not average? Because we don't want to be average anyway. So we want to be figuring out in our businesses, how can we actually continue to grow? What do we need to do differently? And yep, some of these things are going to be harder. But if you look at retail, for instance, they're all just copycats. They go, you know what, we ordered too much stock, we need to turn that into cash, let's all run a sale. And then we see, let's do a mystery box. Well, we're all just doing the same things. And so we're saying, well, the consumer's cottoning onto that pretty quick, and even they're running out of cash. So you've got to be a little bit different. You've got to think, how can I zig when others are zagging? How can I sell into areas that I haven't previously? What could I be doing differently? So I genuinely believe that if interest rates stay here for quite some time, we could be in for a few years of just this thing going backwards, because the access to credit may just not be there anymore. But for each of us individually, we've then just got to start to scenario plan, what would that look like, and then what hard decisions would I have to potentially make, and how can I fight against that if I need to. And a very, very simple example, I said to a client the other day, they're in the cleaning space, and I said, you've got a massive list of customers. Every month you need to be offering those customers your new special. And she said, well, we don't have a special. And I'm like, well, you got an hour to make one up. And it's, this month it's cleaning your oven, then it's cleaning your pool, then it's cleaning your outdoor barbecue. I'm like, there's 12 potential things that you can sell to people who already trust you. And they're like, okay. So they ping it out and they get sales way within 15 minutes. People are applying saying, can I book that out? And so that's as simple as it needs to be sometimes, trying to do something that you're currently not doing. And it might be that only 1% of their customer base buys something. But for her, she said to me, wow, in that 15 minutes, I've paid 3 of the ladies' wages for the next week. So that's like an instant win. And sometimes that's as simple as we have to make it just a bit more energy and go after the dollar where others won't in our space.
Such a great point. It brings to my mind the word potential. And so if you look at the risk versus reward element of market expansion, the first question you answer before you think about expanding in products or services or markets is, have we maximized the potential of our existing market? And to your point, what would be the average client list of a cleaning company like that? They've probably got 100 or 200 customers on a customer list. How many of those have they contacted? And are they on a regular contact cycle? So have they even maximized the potential of their contact with their existing customer base, let alone looking for new business and putting new specials and products and services out there? So that's a really great point. Luke, I think at this point, guys, we're just after 1, so technically we can start wrapping up. So unless somebody has got a question online that you've been burning to ask and you haven't yet typed, we might start to wrap this up. So chuck it in the chat if you've got a question you want asked. Otherwise, we'll look to wrap up. So first of all, thank you, CP, Chris Pope, for taking us through that first level of thinking. So that was kind of the warm-up to get people thinking, to get people aware of some of the things that we're going to go into. Session 2 and Session 3, obviously we're going to go deeper, and there are going to be more workshop elements, more things we're going to make you do to arrive at the answers and capitalize on opportunity. So that's Session 2 and 3 next Thursday and the Thursday following. Thank you, Luke. Awesome to have you on, mate. And I love the way that you talk about accounting. I wish you had taught me at university because I'd probably be better at it had you been my teacher. And Uli, thanks for your thoughts and your panel moderation as well. Looks like people are starting to jump off now. So if there's no more questions, thank you everyone for coming along. We'll see you next Thursday. We will send you out some resources and things to get you started, and we look forward to catching up then. Enjoy the rest of your day.